This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Amidst a presidential vacuum and a fear of uncertainty, the Lebanese capital Beirut woke up to a new shock. A booby-trapped car exploded, killing Francois Al-Haj, the Lebanese army's second-in-command. The headquarters of the Lebanese army is located just a few steps away from the presidential palace. The Lebanese security forces have detained a suspect in connection with the explosion, but said it was too early to know the circumstances surrounding the case. The new assassination is likely to throw the country into yet another sea of questions. Ilian Shatri reports from Beirut.
This is how the suburb of Baghouti, east of the Lebanese capital Beirut, appeared, and this is what was left of the booby-trapped car used in the assassination of the Lebanese military chief of operations, Francois Al-Haj, and his companion, Khairallah Hadwan. The victims were in the front of a convoy that was heading to the headquarters of the Lebanese army in Beirut. Several people were also wounded in the explosion. It is the same old scene. The ground was covered by the bodies of the victims and the burning cars and the rubble of falling buildings.
We heard a large explosion. A minute later, we felt the pressure, and then a fire erupted. I saw people running and bodies flying over the bridge. I also saw the flesh of people scattered on the ground.
Meanwhile, the Lebanese army imposed a security curfew in the area. The Lebanese expressed rage over the incident that targeted their military institution, which many held high hope for, especially since the army is the only institution that was able to provide them with security due to the presidential vacuum in the country.
I want to tell the politicians to elect without delay General Suleiman as the new president of the Republic of Lebanon.
General Al-Haj was considered a leading candidate to succeed General Michel Suleiman, the head of military, if the latter is elected president. Al-Haj was also in charge of military operations against Fatah al-Islam in Nahr al-Barid. The incident will likely open the appetite of many to further escalate the already fragile political situation in the country. This incident will also likely remain in the memory of many Lebanese and remind them of their country's fragile and bitter security situation. This is another episode in a series of criminal acts which started with the assassination of Rafiq al-Hariri in February 14, 2005. From the crime scene in Baghouti, Ilian Shatri, Dubai, East Beirut.
We are now joined live from Beirut with Ibrahim Bayram, a journalist at the Nahar newspaper. Why Francois Al-Haj in particular? Was he the intended target, or was it a message to certain groups?
Certainly, we must read in connection with this crime through the list of intended targets. Without a doubt, General Francois Al-Haj was personally targeted because he led the military operations in the 100 Days War against the Fatah al-Islam group in the Nahr al-Barid camp. The Lebanese army declared a war on Fatah al-Islam, a group that many believe was affiliated with al-Qaeda. After the battles of Nahr al-Barid, the Lebanese army or military institution has become a symbolic idol, which many believe has saved the nation. Now, this attack came to undermine this military institution and its symbolic reputation. The Lebanese army was seen as an institution that has helped to bring the various Lebanese sects and parties together. This crime is also sending a political message to the country as a whole. As you know, the political situation in the country is very tense and vulnerable and open to all possibilities. In addition, all communications and contacts between the opposition and loyalists have indeed broken down. The political situation in the country has also reached a deadlock. This incident will likely escalate the already tense situation.
Brigadier General Francois Al-Haj was one of the most distinguished commanders of the Lebanese army. He was in charge of the successful military operations in Nahr al-Barid refugee camp. The following report highlights the milestones in the life of Brigadier General Al-Haj, the commander of operations in the Lebanese army.
العميد فرانسوا الحاج مدير العمليات في قيادة الجيش اللبناني التحق بالمدرسة الحربية أوائل.
General Francois Al-Haj, the head of operations in the Lebanese army, attended a military school in the early 1970s. When the Lebanese war broke out in 1975, he graduated as a second lieutenant. After the army was split in two in 1976, Al-Haj refused to join on any one side. During this time, he returned to his village, Firmaish, in southern Lebanon. Israelis, in various ways, tried to attract Al-Haj to head a militia loyal to it. When he refused, the Israelis shelled his home in 1976. He was forced to leave his village and rushed to rejoin the army immediately after it was reunited when Elias Sarkis became president in 1976. He led a fierce battle against the Syrians and the Socialist Party on the Souk al-Kharb front in the mountains in the 1980s. He led a division of commandos, a special forces unit in the Lebanese army during the 1990s, and he engaged in battle against the Lebanese Forces Party. In late 1990, when the Syrian forces took control of Lebanon, Al-Haj was pushed out of leadership positions in the army. Francois Al-Haj's star shined during the Nar el-Bared battle, in which the Lebanese army fought against Fatah al-Islam in the Palestinian refugee camp in northern Lebanon last July, which lasted 106 days. Before that, he oversaw the development of the Lebanese army, even on the southern international borders. He was the general who oversaw the handling of the riots which erupted to protest living conditions and paralyzed life in southern Beirut for 2 days. Francois Al-Haj was considered one of the most high-profile candidates to take over command of the army, along with the current director of intelligence, General George Khoury, if the commander of the army, Michel Suleiman, is elected president of Lebanon. Safat Dahi, Al-Arabiya.
إلى مدير المخابرات الحالي العميد جورج خوري، وذلك في حال انتخاب قائد الجيش العماد ميشيل سليمان رئيسا للجمهورية. صفاء ضاحي، العربية.
General Michel Aoun, the head of the Change and Reform Party, condemned the criminal assassination of General Francois Al-Haj. He asked who would benefit from this assassination at a time when the Lebanese have come to an agreement about the election of the president. He added that there are fears about the security situation in the country.
Following what happened in Nar el-Bared, it seems that those who were under protection and those who were not were subjected to catastrophe. This is a larger disaster. Today we are being faced with a security catastrophe. We are beginning to suspect that those who are protecting us are also attacking us.
As those funerals were taking place, Palestinian and Israeli negotiators were meeting for the first time since the Annapolis conference. But the first formal peace talks in 7 years got off to a rocky start amid Palestinian criticism of a new Israeli building project. Many Palestinians are questioning how any progress can be made while Israel continues to target Gaza. They include this man, Marwan Barghouti. Despite being behind bars in Israel, Baghouti is seen by many Palestinians as a possible leader. Politically active since the age of 15, he was one of the major players in the first and second Palestinian intifadas. Now, despite this, he's spoken out against attacks on civilians inside Israel. But it was his support for armed resistance and his close links with Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade which landed him on Israel's most wanted list. In 2004, he was sentenced to 5 life terms for murder and attempted murder. Some still question the legality of his conviction. Now, in an exclusive interview with Al Jazeera, Baghouti has shared his thoughts on the future of the Palestinian territories.
Marwan Barghouti might be behind bars, but his voice still carries across the occupied Palestinian territories.
No peace, no security with occupation.
Seen by many as a potential future president, he's now serving 5 life sentences, but continues to play a key role in Palestinian politics. Dubbed the Nelson Mandela of the West Bank, Al Jazeera asked him to make his own assessment of the chances for peace on the eve of final status negotiations.
There is nothing to suggest Israel is serious about reaching an agreement during the next year. Israel has not taken any positive measures on the ground. It has not removed hundreds of roadblocks. It has not released thousands of prisoners. It has not stopped the settlement activity that has to be stopped before starting negotiations.
Marwan Barghouti told us the Annapolis meeting represented a small and modest step on a path that will be a long and exhausting one. But he said Palestinian unity was vital and that the military coup carried out by Hamas in the Gaza Strip had weakened the internal Palestinian front.
I call upon the leadership of Hamas to take a courageous decision and retreat from controlling the Gaza Strip and to hand over authority to President Abu Mazen.
This is the Israeli jail outside Tel Aviv where Marwan Barghouti is serving his time. He's no longer in solitary confinement. He shares his cell with one other prisoner. They do have a TV set, but the prison warders decide which channel they can watch.
Some analysts in Israel contend Barghouti's charismatic leadership is exactly what is needed now to rally Palestinian moderates. But he told us Israel itself is responsible for the ongoing crisis.
It is Israel who is weakening President Abbas, and it has not offered him anything since his election 3 years ago. The number of Palestinian prisoners has increased from 7,000 3 years ago to 11,000, in addition to continued arrests, killings and destruction.
Like so many other Palestinian families, Marwan Barghoutis have to live with the pain of separation. His son, with whom he briefly shared a prison cell, has at least gained his freedom.
As a son for a father, I wish to see my father with us as a family. As a Palestinian, I wish to see him as a leader in his place in the Palestinian leadership.
I owe all the Palestinian people wherever they are, and owe all the Arab people and all the free people in the world, because since the very first day Marwan has been arrested, they have never left me alone.
When asked by Al Jazeera if he would consider standing for the Palestinian presidency if he was released, Barghouti said he was not preoccupied by such thoughts. He just wanted to end the inheritance of suffering bequeathed on each Palestinian generation. When an election date is announced, though, he said, I will take the appropriate decision. David Chater, Al Jazeera, Jerusalem.
Tonight's top story, Sderot Mayor Eli Moyal quit today amid a barrage of some 20 Qassam rockets. The terrorist bombardment came in the aftermath of an IDF offensive in Gaza. Meanwhile, the High Court of Justice heard a petition today by residents of Sderot demanding that the government build safe rooms for 800 homes in the beleaguered community. IBA's Eli Wagalanter brings us the details.
Sderot Mayor Eli Moyal called it quits as mayor today, saying that he had had enough. In an interview with Israel Radio this afternoon, Moyal said the burden of running a town under constant rocket fire for the past 7 years had reached a breaking point. I have been deliberating matters pertaining to human life for years now, and I cannot continue, he said. This rule is too big for any person. I do not want to stay in office until the day 20 children die in Sderot. Moyal said that no one in the government, including Defense Minister Ehud Barak, has called him despite the barrage of rocket attacks on the city and surrounding areas. Sderot is going to break apart, Moyal said. The question whether Moyal is mayor is insignificant, but the question whether Sderot will receive aid is significant. Moyal's resignation followed a morning of particularly heavy bombardment, with some 20 Qassams falling in and around Sderot within a span of 4 hours. One person was lightly wounded from shrapnel, and several people were treated for shock. One of the rockets landed on a sidewalk in the middle of a main street in the city. Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility for the attack, saying it was a response to the IDF's operation in Gaza yesterday. IDF troops withdrew by dawn this morning to a buffer zone along the Israeli border. 8 terrorists were killed and approximately 60 arrested in multiple operations throughout yesterday in the north and south of the Gaza Strip. It was the largest incursion into Gaza since Hamas's takeover in the coastal strip in June. Defense Minister Barak said the operation was a success and brought significant gains against those firing missiles on Israel. This morning's Qassam attacks came just hours before the High Court of Justice listened to a petition by residents of Sderot demanding that the government build safe rooms for 800 homes or compensate those who have already built them with their own money. The government is arguing that it is not obliged by law to provide shelters and that it has the right to decide how to spend the budget in accordance with its own priorities. Eli Wogelanter, IBA News.
The spokeswoman for the UN Secretary-General, Michel Montas, said that the ongoing Zionist blockade imposed on the Gaza Strip has cost the UN more than $200 million in lost revenue due to canceled projects.
Gaza has been put in a chokehold. The losses may vary, but the blockade is won. These were the words of the spokeswoman for the UN Secretary-General, Michel Montas. Montas said that the ongoing Zionist blockade imposed on the Gaza Strip will lead to the destruction of organizational infrastructure of the Palestinian society. In addition, the blockade has indeed ruined many UN projects, including 17 projects to secure clean drinking water to the residents of Gaza, as well as plans to supply 3 local hospitals and establish residential units to accommodate the nearly 27,000 displaced residents.
Israel is preventing many things from entering the Gaza Strip. For example, it doesn't allow building materials to enter into Gaza. We have invested more than $93 million in joint projects with UNRWA. The projects include plans to build thousands of residential units, schools, clinics, and sewer treatment plants. All these projects are now on halt because Israel doesn't allow us to bring in building materials such as cement, steel, and other building supplies.
These projects, which have a market value of $200 million, did not help the residents of Gaza improve their living conditions. This news comes as the economic, social, and health situations in the Gaza Strip continue to deteriorate, especially during the current year. Nearly 75% of the residents live in the Gaza Strip depend solely on humanitarian aid.
These people who depend on humanitarian aid from UNRWA are considered to be refugees, which adds more burden on the UN and other human rights organizations, and sometimes overwhelm their operations on the ground.
Montas's comments coincided with a report by the Damir Association for Human Rights, which said that the health situation in the Gaza Strip continues to deteriorate due to the Israeli blockade. In addition, more than 1,300 residents who are seriously ill require treatment abroad because local hospitals can't accommodate their needs, especially considering that most hospitals suffer from a shortage of medicine and medical supplies and equipment.
The health situation in the Gaza Strip will take a turn for the worse unless the international community intervenes and mounts pressure on the government of the occupation and forces it to lift the blockade imposed on Gaza. Israel must respect those international laws pertaining to the relationship between the occupiers and those under their rule.
Meanwhile, the residents of the Gaza Strip continue to taste the bitterness of the blockade that has been imposed on them by the criminal Zionist occupation. The ongoing Israeli blockade has led to losses in the various sectors of Palestinian life, as well as helped ruin many UN projects in the region, thus preventing the Palestinians from improving their deteriorating living conditions.
يبدو أن الاتصال لم يجهز. نواصل نشرة الأخبار في مديريتي جيري.
Afghan and NATO forces continue to carry out military operations in the districts of Jeri and Benjawa'i in Afghanistan's southern Helmand province. Meanwhile, fierce fighting erupted in the area of Maimand between Taliban fighters and Afghan forces. In addition, a car bomb targeting an Afghan military convoy in Kandahar exploded.
عند مرور قافلة للجيش الأفغاني.
Musa Qala might be the new remote battle site between Kabul and its international allies on one side and the Taliban on the other. The town, which enjoys a strategic location, makes it rather difficult for one group or the other to maintain control. Amidst conflicting reports, the Taliban announced that its fighters have killed 40 Afghan soldiers, whereas Kabul announced that 50 armed fighters have been killed in the battles. The decline in the popularity of Karzai's government and the slow process of reforms and reconstruction may push Kabul's allies, including the British Prime Minister, to reconsider their strategy in the country. According to the independent newspaper, British Prime Minister Gordon Brown did not rule out the possibility of opening a dialogue with the Taliban, in a move that could overhaul his country's strategy in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, Afghanistan, which has been torn by years of wars and conflicts, is likely to continue living amidst uncertainty, especially in the absence of alternatives and solutions. The equation gets more complicated as many new alliances continue to emerge in the country. This news comes as the Taliban started to enjoy more support among opposition groups, including some anti-Karzai Islamic parties. The Karzai government has failed tremendously to achieve the minimum progress required, especially at the security level. In Kandahar, a car bomb targeting an Afghan military convoy exploded, and with it, the bloodshed continues.
Egypt's Deputy Foreign Minister Hussein Darar, who arrived in Iran late last night, submitted a written message to Foreign Minister Manouchehr Mottaki from his Egyptian counterpart Ahmad Abul-Qait. In the meeting, the two sides also discussed regional and international developments, as well as issues of mutual interest. They stressed continuation of the ongoing constructive dialogue between the two countries. President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad said on Tuesday he was in favor of resuming ties with Egypt, which, as he noted, would be in the interest of the two peoples. The Islamic Revolution leader's representative at the Supreme National Security Council highlights peaceful use of nuclear energy as Iran's key strategy. Addressing university students in the northeastern city of Mashhad, Ali Larijani said efforts to access civilian atomic know-how got underway back in late 1980s, gained momentum by next governments, and has seen outstanding progress during President Ahmadinejad's term of office. He made it clear that Iran would not retreat from its national interests vis-à-vis the U.S. hegemony, adding Washington can share interests with Tehran in case they change their regional approach. Larijani further said that Tehran will pursue efforts for prevalence of security both in Iraq and Afghanistan, since insecurity in the neighboring countries can pose a danger to Iran's national security. Technical talks between Iranian negotiators and a team of representatives from the International Atomic Energy Agency drew to a close on Wednesday. Iran's ambassador to the UN Nuclear Agency, Ali Asghar Soltanieh, and IAEA Director for Safeguards Operations, Herman Nakert, chaired the three-day discussions on the source of contamination in a Tehran university. The talks were the latest of a series in the framework of a modality plan, which has already answered a number of outstanding questions, namely P1 and P2 centrifuges and metal uranium cases. President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has accepted the request of U.S. acclaimed filmmaker Oliver Stone for making a biopic about him. President Ahmadinejad's art advisor Javad Shamakhdari said that the necessary arrangements have been made at Iran's embassy in Abu Dhabi in a bid to facilitate issuance of an entry visa for Oliver Stone. He added Stone will visit Iran to hold talks with the president and make some arrangements about the film production. At his first official request, Stone said that the production of this film would make Iranian and American people closer. Stone made a documentary about Cuban President Fidel Castro named Comandante in 2003.
علاقة السودان كدولة كبرى في أفريقيا مع الولايات المتحدة هي علاقة
Your Excellency, as the President of Sudan, the relationship between Sudan as a large African country and the U.S. is strange. Historically, this relationship was good, but at one point it deteriorated to a point where American planes hit targets inside Sudan. Now we are hearing about security cooperation between Sudan and the U.S. We can't understand the negative American position towards Sudan, especially when considering that the American oil companies left Sudan voluntarily. Sudan has also opened the door to all international oil companies. As the President of Sudan, what is the reason behind the U.S. policy?
هو طبعا السودان كجزء من الأمة العربية والإسلامية هو معرض لاستهداف من مجموعات الضغط والصهيونية بالذات.
Sudan is part of the Muslim and Arab nations. Sudan has been targeted by some lobby groups, especially the Zionist groups. We know how much influence these groups have over American and Western policymakers. It's true, the U.S. oil companies discovered oil in Sudan, and they acquired royalties to all oil fields in Sudan. The United States had dug a large number of oil fields with the objective of figuring out the size of oil reserves in Sudan. However, it appears that the Americans did not want to dig more oil fields in Sudan because at the time they already had enough oil, which explains why they stopped working in Sudan. This happened during the presidency of Numeri. At the time, the American oil companies said that they do not have security, but most oil fields were secured and there were no problems. The American oil companies planned to come back to Sudan at one point. Some influential American officials who are interested in oil said that the Sudanese oil belongs to the United States. They also said that they plan to use it to maintain the living standards of American citizens. They wanted to use the Sudanese oil, but at the right time. American officials said that they will not allow the Sudanese oil to go to China and Malaysia. One of them literally said, "This is our oil." Of course, the U.S. has had all the information about the oil reserves in Sudan. In contrast, the Sudanese government did not know the size of the Sudanese oil reserve, the type of oil, or what kind of economic significance it had. The Sudanese did not know any of this information. They only had negative information about their oil. The Sudanese government had thought that it was not economically feasible to utilize Sudan's oil unless the price of oil reached $27. At the time, the price of oil was only $16 a barrel. These reasons discouraged companies from coming to Sudan, and we also failed to attract oil companies here. Then, with the help of one of our brothers in Pakistan, who at the time was living in Canada, we managed to extract limited amounts of oil. The oil was ready to be pumped anyways, since the oil field was already dug. We also managed to build an oil refinery. Then Chinese, Malaysian, and Pakistani oil companies came to Sudan.
وعدد من الشركات حتى الأوروبية يعني.
وكأنك فخامة الرئيس محدد سلبية العلاقة بين السودان.
What is preventing American oil companies from working in Sudan these days?
أي شركة أمريكية من أن تعمل في السودان.
Of course, the American law does not allow oil companies to work in Sudan because Sudan is on the list of countries that support terrorism. This prevents the American government from dealing directly with the Sudanese government, and it also prevents American oil companies from working here. We have invited American oil companies to come to Sudan, and we said on several occasions that American oil companies are welcome in Sudan. As I said previously, oil has caused one of the problems between the U.S. and Sudan. The other problems were caused by the fact that the Sudanese government has Islamic orientation. The Americans view our Islamic orientation as a threat to security and stability in the region because the objective is to maintain the security and stability of Israel.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.